Yo, what's up, bro?
Hello, hello. How you doing?
Good, good. How are you?
So you made an updated. Few things change.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, check this out. So, I had no idea about the whole Shining thing, and I
Oh.
always thought for some reason like that Shining was mainly for like higher level players and things like that. So I had literally prepared for nothing. I have probably had like a bill and some change.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked some guildies, and they were letting me know that I should try to get my CRA to 17. So that's what I did with all my Meso.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and that went well.
Yeah, I actually got the three set to 17, so that was cool.
Cool. Yeah, or that early on, that's a lot of extra weapon attack, which you typically don't have too much of. So that's a solid start to the progression.
Right, right.
Yeah, usually depending on where you are exactly, the balance might be a little bit more in favor of flaming. Well, although that's very rarely the case, but usually it's always between like, do you focus more on Star Force? Do you focus more on the potentials? And it shifts, right, as you get into different stages, as you kind of hit a wall where you need backups, as you hit an event that usually upsets the balance a little bit. And I think Shining was probably the most balance tilting thing that we ever had so far in favor of Star Force, where you would probably do well to just splurge a little bit, and aka spend all of your money, and then just earn it back afterwards. And yeah, so there's no problem doing that.
Yeah, that's facts, man. Just a little background about my history with Maple. I used to play a while back,
Mm-hmm.
um, pre Big Bang when I started, and then I came back post Big Bang, played it for a while, and then I haven't came back some some years, and then when Reboot got released, that's when I started again.
Mm-hmm.
Checked it out. I think I made a level 200 dual blade, and then I'm always on and off, but this is the furthest I took a character
Mm-hmm.
past 200. So I came back on at Destiny, which was pretty dope.
Mm-hmm.
I leveled up a DK and a what's it called? A Night Lord to
Okay.
220 as well, but I ended up choosing not to main them. So I picked up this hero was one of the other 200s I leveled up, and
Mm-hmm.
I just like, you know what? I'm gonna just brute force this hero even without all those extra nodes that the burning offered. So
Okay.
um I threw all the loose nodes into my hero that I have now decided to main.
Mm-hmm.
Um but yeah, that's pretty much it as far as that. I do want to try to take this hero as far as I can. Right now, I'm able to solo three door, um, as of right now, yeah, and all the other chaos bosses, I guess. But
Mm-hmm.
I guess my main goal with with Maple in general and the hero is to try to get to 250. That's the more general goal. But I kind of have some questions on like how I should go about it to be more efficient.
Mm-hmm. But see, you have for someone with this legion, usually they don't have that many characters like above 210. But I guess the current burns really did benefit for people from doing that. But do you have kind of like new main syndrome, where you're like kind of like hopping around, or is that?
Oh man. That was me, man. So, like right now, like I said, the heroes is furthest I took it ever. But usually with characters, like if I get to 200 or 210, like I'll get bored of it and I'll make a new main or like a new character. But yeah, I guess that's is that what it's called, the new main syndrome?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what to call it, but like people call it like main hopping or something, where just the fact that the character's still new and you're still in that discovery phase of the character, a lot of times that's fun. And then when that kind of like dies down, when you kind of like figure out what the class does, you're like, but there's something shiny over here. Let's try this one, And I don't know, maybe
Yeah,
it's like some kind of expression of some kind of internal ADHD or something. Where I mean, I think
dude.
it's totally fine, because if you're like, I just want to constantly be just discovering the game again through like new eyes, and that's just what's fun. Usually that works up until a certain point, and up until you're like, well, I kind of want to do like Lucid and Will, and I can't do that if every character like hits a giant wall at 220. Like you can't get there.
For sure, man. And I feel like right now I'm kind of on that phase where like I actually want to learn these new bosses and try to get some combat experience with them, I guess. So that's where I'm finding a lot more enjoyment in the game, aside from grinding and stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah, grinding will always be there. You'll never run out of grinding
for
to
sure,
do.
Man.
So. whatever you go doing with bosses, you can always return to grinding. You'll be fine there.
Facts.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so you're 225 now. So but you feel like the heroes is the character that you definitely want to do that with.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like as far as damage goes and things like that, I feel like I flow well with the class, I guess, if that makes sense. So yeah, and like I said, this is the furthest I pushed the class, and I definitely want to take it as far as I can.
Okay.
So, and I know, like, watching some of your older videos and things like that, I know that Legion and links are a big part of account growth, which is something I kind of want to get into. The 3K Legion I have right now, I wasn't even like focused on Legion or anything. I was just like leveling up whoever I that seems fun, you know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know like where to start or like what I'm missing as far as what's it called, maximizing on training, things like that.
Okay. Yeah, so okay, so it seems like your main question is like about like efficiency, so that you know what would be most efficient in case you wanted to, and have the peace of mind that you're not missing out on any amazing things that could be speeding up the whole process if you would be so inclined.
Yeah, for sure. Like I know that the as far as like account growth, like I would, like knowing me, that I know eventually I might just get tired of the hero when I hit a certain level, or when I'm just tired of it, and then I would want some of the time I'm spending to be on the account growth, so that way when I do create that new character or go back onto another one, like I'll have some type of gain from the Legion, the links that I have, whatnot.
Yeah.
Just go from there.
Yeah, they keep getting steady growth and not just yeah, the whole account moves forward if Legion and links and all that move forward. Your member bonus, link bonus, links, Legion, like Cygnus skills, there's some attack there that goes across account. Every single character will just be able to not just start back from square one, right? You want them to get like what I call kind of like the snowball running down the hill, right? You kind of want to make sure that you can hitchhike. Yeah, sure thing. So there's a few commands that go into this stuff. So if that's your I guess your general question, we could start there. So general progression, I would say, is there's a bunch of things that give you damage, right? So I've broken that down into progression grid. Have you seen that one?
Progression grid. I don't think I have.
So this is basically like when we do sessions like these, kind of what I have either in the back of my mind or what we actively look at. So I guess in this case, actively looking at. So this kind of keeps track of where you want to be in terms of a bunch of metrics in the game, so that you can comfortably do the stuff around your level. And then the stuff around your level, I classified, it's kind of has more and more in common now. They've updated the Maple guide, right? Maybe you've seen that with like the boss tab is quite clear now. So that tracks pretty heavily this, although that star system in the boss guide makes absolutely no sense, right? It's like 6 bronze stars and 3 gold ones, and I don't know what any of that means, but so I kind of, based on monster level, based on rate of access, all of these two grids kind of work in tandem in case of like when can you realistically across the board kind of start doing a certain thing. Of course, if you have a huge Legion, right, you might be able to do things way more easily, but that would be reflected in the progression grid, because then if you look at the Legion level, if you're already like in late game or in end game in terms of Legion level, that would mean that basically that takes care of some of the damage of the other parts. So if you're a little bit lower on the other ends, you'll still be able to do the things at the same point. So when people are like, oh, you know, your character is so weak or it doesn't have high level boost nodes, how come you can do so much damage? Well, that's because one of these is highly over. So I would always advise if there's something that you inherently like doing. So some people just like sitting brainlessly in a map for endless hours and like farming like items. In those cases, like you'll go higher on mesos and on drops. So probably your nodes and then your star force and maybe your potentials, those will be a little bit, or those will be above average, right? Which means that if the other ones are a little bit neglected because you don't like that as much, you'll still be in balance within your account. So this is generally what I use to kind of advise people if anyone's wondering like where should I push harder, or like when is it time to work on X, or when is it time to work on Y. I usually always just go back to this, and sometimes we make some adjustments, and you know, sometimes the level cap goes up and we have to make huge adjustments, which I had to do recently. So to say, I would never I would generally advise to never neglect any of these, but always do the ones you dislike the most the least, and do the one you like the most. And hopefully that is good enough to like stay within the boundaries of this balance. So what you're asking about, like with Legion and everything, I think you're like around the point where you want to be, that you're definitely not behind. There's some easy ways to get a lot of gains in Legion without needing to get super into every character and investing a whole lot of mesos, right? You don't want it to take away too much money from your main character. And that basically comes down to just mass production, at least in from an efficiency standpoint. It comes down to mass production in Legion, because your top 40 characters that are at least level 60, those will all count. So that means you have 23 more characters, right, that can count. If you get 23 more level 100s, now you're at 5.3k Legion.
Oh, okay. So they count the first 40 that you make.
No, so the 40 highest level characters that are at least 60. So
okay.
It has to be 60 to show up here in the bottom left. And then as soon as it's 60, it checks, is it within the top 40? If it is, the level gets added to the total level on the top right. If it isn't, the level doesn't get added. So once you get to 40 characters, if you want to go up one level, it has to be at least one level over what is your lowest level character. So either an existing character, or you have to make like a level 61, and then you get one level, not 61 anymore, right? So getting to 6k is pretty reasonable, because you have 40 characters, all like around 140 and above. Then you're at 6k, right? And you will very easily get there. You won't even need all 40 characters, because you already have a bunch over 200. So 6k will be very, very reasonable. So if you think about it, like, you know, make one new character every other day, for example, then or every day, like, I don't know your life. I don't know how much time you have every day, how much you want to spend. If you do like one new character every other day, then in like a month and a half, even if you just get to level 60, or let's say the level 70, then in a month and a half, just from that, you'll get an extra, what is it, like 1,400 levels or something. So you already get pretty close to 5k.
Okay, makes sense.
And then the good part about that is, once those characters come online, you get the level 1 link, right? You get the Legion levels, which means as you grow, more raid power, more coin income, so you get more access to the... because that's the whole thing, right? With Legion, it's like you grow the character, so you get the link skills. You put them in you get to put more in the board, so you get more grid bonus. The characters themselves gives you member bonus, and then the Legion power goes up, which gives you more access to coins. And all of that is just connected to playing multiple characters. And you can use it to your advantage by the fact that you might, you know, hop around a little bit every now and then. That is a huge advantage, because some people just absolutely hate playing other characters. They just want to play one character and one character alone. And that can get you pretty far in the game, but you miss out on a lot if you know, the longer you do that.
No, yeah, for sure. Makes sense. So, I definitely want to build, like, I look at Legion like the foundation of whatever character I make, you know what I mean? So it's like, definitely want to get that up there.
Exactly. So within the Legion command, I've got 3 things here. One is the overview here that has the links and the Legion buffs of all the characters in the game, and I basically like divided them over categories. So like the yellow ones is the vital ones, the green ones are the utility ones, and then blue is bossing, red is just, you know, extra damage for specific scenarios. And then the white ones are just trash. And the green you can see here is the Legion buff, and the clear grids are the link skills. And then just based on those stats, you know, it just orders itself on I think, on efficiency and on value. So based on that, you can kind of see like where I would start and what that foundation would be, in my opinion, to build out your stronger characters. And if you roughly follow this, but if there's a character that's interesting to you, by all means, go play it, right? Because at least you'll still get the Legion levels. It'll come back to you in Legion power, whatever. It's still valuable.
Yeah.
If you find a character you absolutely hate, I would just take a mental note and then either, brute force it with growth potions, or with like a burn, right? For all of these, I have commands. Like for extreme growth potions, I have a command because sometimes people can like maroon their characters a little bit. They can make them, have like level 120 gear and then be level 180. As long as you know that it's going to be fine at 180, or what you're going to do after you do the growth potions, make sure you have that plan before you just slam growth potions on something. Because otherwise your character might still need the same funding as they would getting from 140 to 200. But if you only give them that funding at 180 because they can't kill anything and you want to get to 200, you're losing out on 40 levels of making your money back on that investment. So
okay, I see what you mean.
I would like plan ahead on like these characters are kind of fun. I'm okay training these. Then they go into like group A. These characters are like okay-ish, but if I can get them some extra help, they'll go into group B. And then group C is like these characters are absolutely horrible. This would be like Terror Burn, growth potions, any kind of EXP event, as long as I have to play them like as little as possible, And as long as your characters are kind of mentally in one of those three groups, whenever you see an event coming, you can immediately be like, oh, this is an event for Group C. Okay, let's see what's top on the list and there, and then let's get that one done. Or there's, something fun. Maybe there's a training event, and I'm kind of okay with the hero, or I want to play multiple characters a little bit. Oh, then let's pick something from column A that also helps my Legion, basically.
Oh, okay. I like the way you kind of systemize it instead of kind of... That's something more in my ballpark as far as just picking the best skill and whatnot. I do want to pick what's it called? I do want to separate the fun trained characters and the unfun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just like a quality and quantity, like a combination approach kind of thing.
Right.
You want to get good value for it, but you also, it's still a video game, right? You still want to enjoy your time here, hopefully, and have fun.
Yeah.
So I would say that's always like the first thing to look at is like what is fun, and then second of all, it's also cool if you can get a little bit of efficiency with your fun. Because then you get to hit your fun even harder next time,
Right, for sure.
So that's one thing. The other thing is like Legion building hub. So this basically looks at just, in general how you can go up, level guide. So you can start with making a bunch of level 60s or level 70s. 70s advised because then you have at least access to level 1 link skills. Some people are just like, I want to do 100. Some people want to do all the way to 150 first. That's all personal preference. Maybe there's a new character where you're like, this 60 is enough, and maybe another one, you just look around and you see that the sun is coming up and you're like, oh shit, I'm already 180. This character was actually way too much fun. So whatever you do, but if you're really just trying to crank out the Legion, it's just power and numbers. Just make a new character, because every single level on a lower level character is easier than on a higher level character. So the value of the levels in the beginning is just in numbers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Then starting at 100, you can do Zakum. It's a little different now because you have actually unlimited entries in Zakum now, which and in Horntail and bosses like that, which inherently does seem weird because it's like, well, if you fail, you fail. But the thing with Zakum and Horntail is that you get EXP from the body parts, and in Zakum, most of the EXP actually comes from the body parts. But as long as you don't kill Zakum himself, you haven't cleared the boss. So you can go in, clear the arms, and leave, and then go back half an hour later. And this allows you to kind of like cycle through all of your characters and a bunch of characters and get them from 100 to 140 very easily. Because if there's one day where you're like, okay, I'm not really busy, you could just do like 10 characters or something and just keep cycling through them and just do Zakum after Zakum after Zakum. As long as you make sure that you don't kill the body itself, but just the arms, you can, get an insane amount of experience with no effort. Like, you need no funding, you don't need to find a map, you don't need to, and all of the money is just that you do make, which is not that much because you're not killing anything, but you're not spending anything either. You don't need potions, So if you're just, if you're just looking for the mechanical, like, how do I get from point A to point B, that's the advice I'll give you there. But again, if classes are more enjoyable, then you might, not choose this approach specifically and might actually enjoy hopping around, learning the skills and that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I feel like that would save on Telly Rocks too.
You can just dump them at the door to Zakum and get it in and out.
That makes sense. What's the cooldown for bosses is like 30 minutes now, right?
Yeah, for almost all the bosses, 30 minutes, and then they changed the entry limit for bosses quite a bit with Destiny. So it used to be a lot of bosses just had like one entry a day, especially for the weeklies, and then the dailies had like a 30-minute cooldown for entry typically. And now it's for the ones that were daily basically went to 30-minute, stayed in 30-minute, and then the weeklies stayed at 30-minute. Or went to 30-minute, but gave you like a 3 a day entry limit. So even up until Black Mage, you can technically attempt Black Mage like 3 times in a day now versus 1 time a day before. So
For sure.
Something goes bad,
Makes
or
sense.
someone. So in the past, it was like, oh, somebody crashes near the end of the boss fight. It's like, okay, well, rip you, I guess, you know, rip your run. But now if you're like with a group of friends, you could be like, okay, let's just, you know, go do something else and like come back in maybe an hour if you had guild skills on, or like maybe in 30 minutes, and then you could just still get the run done that day. So that's a little bit more forgiving.
Ah, okay. Oh yeah, it's more of a quality of like all the quality of life changes was pretty good that on this update. That's another big thing too.
Yeah.
Made it more easier to play.
Yeah, and they made it a bit easier to find that stuff as well, where it's like weekly clear. Sometimes you can see like daily entry. Like here, you see like daily challenge count, right? So if there's a limit, you can see like 0 out of 3, 0 out of 1. So you have a bit more information. And then in August 31st update, they should add the if everything goes according to plan, I believe the like the pickup group or looking for a group interaction also happens on the boss menu, and then you'll be able to like post listings for or list postings, I guess, I don't know which one it is, on like I'm making a group for Lucid, and then with some stat requirements or some you know, some text, whatever, and then you can have an easier time making groups for boss fights as well. So that's gonna be another.
Oh, that's pretty sick.
Yeah, it's, you know, never too late, I guess. 19-year-old game gets a boss group option, but okay. We'll take it, I guess.
Dude,
right?
Dude, for real. Yeah, another let's see here. Yeah, another question I have would be like when would be a good time to be working on like drop gear or meso gear? Like I haven't really been into like, you know, farming, like grinding for meso, but you know, the Meso will just come because I always grind and whatnot, but I was wondering when, like, at what level or what point of the game where I should be, like, getting that gear going.
Yeah, I was thinking of maybe adding, like, how much... It's a little weird, but, like, adding how much drop and Meso you'd want to have in this grid, but I want the grid to not... It's already a little bit big with, like, a lot of stuff in there, and I don't want to add, like, 16 rows in there. But you actually do it very early, I would say. Because especially now, if you asked me like 6 months ago, well, maybe not 6 months ago, but like a year ago, my answer would be quite different, because people would have like a Kana that they could farm on, right, with Kishin.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, even if they weren't, even if like in the total amount of time it didn't 100% make sense for them, it would make sense in terms of like having like 30 minutes here, 45 minutes there, and being able to sneak in some grinding here and there without being able to like fully commit to totems, right? That was a big value of Kana, that you could just, you know, sneak a little bit of training in whenever. Now it's basically for all of your income, you're just really relegated to totems in the beginning, and then as you start building up your account on bosses from secondary characters, and that's pretty much it. So I would say that you want to start increasing your income per totem as early as you can. So once you are reliably getting all of your other upgrades going, and you are getting to the point where you can, what people refer to as one shot, what I kind of want to change that to like being able to map clear, right? Because that's more important, whether they die in one hit or not. It's whether you can kill most or all of the monsters before the spawn cycle happens. Once you realize that you're close to that or able to do that, you want to optimize your gains, so drop and meso, within that. And because of the amount of power creep that exists in the game, you can start doing that very early. And so you basically want all of your damage early on. You want it to come from your weapon, your secondary, your emblem, and then from a little bit from Legion, of course, and links and that stuff. And then from your boost nodes and your arcane power. Those are what really, those things together is where all of your damage really needs to come from. and your accessories, I think, are there pretty much just for the functionality of drop and Meso. So as soon as your weapon, secondary, and emblem are either have like really good unique lines, or they're legendary with like 1.5 to 2 like useful solid lines that do something while you're mobbing, I would say the next step there is going for drop rate gear and Meso gear to make sure that when you are doing totems, you're getting your money's worth. Because there is already going to, like, naturally in your progression, there's going to be a bit of a gap. Because if you don't go invest in the drop or Meso gear, you're not getting like very good equips really quickly. You're not getting backups quickly enough. And what'll happen is all of your money gets soaked up into slightly more inefficient ways of upgrading your gear. Like, you'll see people having like 12-star legendary Absolab gear, for example. Or maybe that's you. I haven't scrolled through everything yet. But then, and then what that does is that locks you into having to safeguard on the Absolab, or not safeguarding and then maybe having to get backups, which then time limits you again in how many backups you can get, right, with the weeklies. Instead, what makes more sense is to just invest first in the drop in Meso gear, get backups in the form of the fodder gear to transfer hammer into. So for for the Absolab stuff, a lot of that is like the Ranmaru gear, the Keosakum cape, that kind of stuff, right? Maybe the root shoes and the root gloves that you can buy from the Root Abyss shop and from the black market shop, and have those backups lying around, and invest first in a drop in Meso and be making that money. And then you can look out for events and be like, oh, there's a 30% off coming. Cool, that means we can send some stuff up to 15. And then you can just like donkey roll that burn gear, that fodder gear, and get it up to 15 without needing to safeguard. And that saves about 550 mil per Absolab piece to eventually get it to 16 by just waiting for the event, doing it at the right time. And that opens up billions to get better potentials, get better flames, but also to make the next step of the upgrade a little bit faster. And because you need that time anyway to get backups, that time is very well spent on working on your accessories that you can get access to pretty quickly, even though they might seem like very bad accessories. Doesn't matter that they're bad. You want to drop into Meso from them so that you can get more value out of your totems. And then, yeah, once you have those backups, then you also have more money to actually make those big jumps. Because the idea behind all of that is that you don't want to make very small jumps and upgrades, because then comparatively every single jump is more expensive, if that makes sense, right? Like if you're,
I get it.
You're like max upgrading a level 100 equip. Okay, well the level 110 equip has like 3 more stat and 2 more attack, and I'm gonna max upgrade that one. That's like horrible financially, right? Because you barely feel that upgrade, but it's extremely expensive. So you want to make like significant jumps. So jumps are like, in the beginning you go to 10 star, and then you go to 12 star, and then the next jump is basically 17. You usually do it with like an intermediate jump at 15, and you want to use like a 30% off to get to 15, and then a 5 and 15 to get to 17. But you basically jump from 12 to 17 stars. That's a huge jump that needs a lot of Meso. How do you get that Meso? By investing in the drop in Meso gear first, getting backups so you can make that jump more reliably, and then once you have the money in the event and the backups, then you make that jump, and then you can go back and work on the potential, basically. And that's because of transfer hammer, because a lot of times a lot of items you will transfer hammer over, and then the potential gets reset back down to epic. So if you want to keep that option open, you don't want to work on the potential first, you want to work on the Star Force first. And
that makes sense. That sounds more efficient for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the bad habits I've had since I've probably been on Maple, since even way back, would be like, as soon as I touch even one Meso, that is gone already, bro.
Yeah.
like after Ursus and whatever, I would blow it on cubes and just cube like one atom at a time, and like it was like the slowest thing ever. And
in the beginning it's good, like, right? Because you can comparatively make big gains in the beginning, and one right cube and you could gain like 15% stat or something and get significantly stronger. But the longer you do that, the more you also stand to lose when you redo your potential, and the less significant your money invested there becomes. And that's when the events come in. A lot of people feel, at least initially, they feel kind of like railroaded into like, oh, you have to wait for this event to do this and wait for this event to do that. I usually see it more as I see it more as a positive in the sense that if I didn't have the event, I didn't really have the guidance to say like now it's a good time to do it, and you'd be more like a if you can look up how much an investment costs, you can look how many booms it's going to be, right? You have calculators for that, and then you can look at your inventory and see, well, do I have the backups? No, I don't. Okay, that means you can skip the event. Like that's for me, that makes it more makes more freeing for me, so because then I don't have to worry. Because I think most of the worrying comes if you're not sure if you should or shouldn't, right? And if it's a clear you shouldn't, then that feels better to me than maybe I should. That feels a little bit more uncertain. So, but I guess it's maybe a bit of a perspective shift on that.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense as far as like stressing out to prepare for an event where I don't even know I don't even have a plan for it yet. You know what I mean? So. But it does feel good. Like there was a time where I saved up like 5 bills, probably like the most I've ever had at one place, and I did like a crazy cubing session at MMT, and I was like, okay, like freaking huge gains. What's it called? Like a huge, basically level up in my damage and stuff like that. So that was something that I feel like I could be doing instead of just blowing it every chance I get. For incremental gains, rather than just like,
at a certain point you just have to, otherwise all of the work you go into, and because there's like a critical mass of money, right? Like let's say that the next upgrade you want to do costs 5 bill and you have like 6 bill, that means there's still a significant chance that you don't get it, and then it will feel like all the time you spent getting that 6 bill was completely wasted. Now get in the other scenario where you wait longer and the upgrade is still on average 5 bill, but now you have 10 bill. Now the chance that you get it, even if you get really unlucky, is like 99%. Like it's very unlikely that you're spending more than double, right?
Right.
So now suddenly the difference is, even if you spend all your money, and it will feel bad if you get unlucky, but the difference is you still have the upgrade at the end of the day. So now your time, even though you feel bad about the upgrade being unlucky, it's you still have all of that value in your time versus nothing. And for your mental, if you have that first case scenario like 2 or 3 times, you quit because it's like, well, the last few months of playing just have led to absolutely no upgrades. Like fuck this game, And maybe that's better, for some people. Maybe it's better to not play this game as much. There's probably some truth there as well. But if you want to keep it fun, you want to keep it lighthearted, and you want to give yourself a chance to get value out of your time that you spend, the strategy there is quite necessary.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Somebody in chat was asking, like, do you go for Meso and Link besides being overall weaker? So we touched on that a little bit. Is you definitely don't want to just do drop rate and Meso gear as the very first items, because you need that baseline of damage, right? That's why I'm saying your node stones, your arcane power, and your weapons, secondary, and emblem. That's where a lot of your attack percentage comes from, and that is what you need as a baseline to be able to do that map clear that we talked about. If you are very barely map clearing, or not even yet, and you're relying on damage from your accessories, and then you roll out of it on your accessories, there is a good chance you actually lower your income, because of course, you can increase the income per monster by like 20%, but if you reduce your kill speed by 50%, well, now you're at a net deficit. So that's not that's not a step forward. That's a step backwards. So that's why usually I advise people to work on the boss and the Meso and drop rate gear pretty early, because by that time you probably haven't really started to rely on stats from your holy shit, the Dominator Pendant. From your accessories yet. Usually things are still like epic, and maybe a few of them are barely unique, which means that if you jump to legendary and you get drop or Meso, hopefully with one line of stat on all of them as well, you stay equal in damage from your accessories, or maybe even go up, and then it doesn't feel as much as a step back in kill speed.
Yeah, right? I think that makes a lot of sense, because you kind of have more of a understanding where your damage lies, and then you find that balance. But as of right now, I feel like if I were to cube out, let's say, my rings or pendants and earrings, I feel like I definitely would not. I would definitely notice like the damage decrease, and I wouldn't know if it would be profitable, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And it's possible, especially if you're trying to level at the highest areas where you can go to. If you're going to like Arcana, you'll be disproportionately still relying on that percentage strength. But that's mainly because your arcane power hasn't caught up yet to that area, which, you know, it's normal. And especially because it's not your like Terror Burn with all the free stuff, right? And same reason, because your nodes aren't like quite there yet. So if you look at the progression grid, that makes sense that, you know, you're on the lower end of those metrics, which means you'll have to overcompensate with other things, which means that you're right now, quote unquote, like overcompensating stat wise by grabbing some of the extra from those accessories. But the idea behind it would be like, you know, get your arcane power hyperset pretty high, make sure you're in a guild with hyperset, you know, with arcane power, all of that stuff, and definitely work on those dailies. Maybe stay in a lower level area, which is still probably fine, which you probably have to because of your boost nodes. So you stay in Lacaline a little bit longer, and you'll very quickly start being able to like full map clear there and roll out of the accessories with the money you make. And then as you feel like you're really on top of it and have enough money, as long as the arcane power and the node stones track, you should be able to move into Arcana pretty quickly. And then your gains, your rates will be significantly higher, because the other thing is that you want to get value from all of the stuff in your account, and most of the stuff is additive, so it's not as important. But if you have a limited amount of totems, you want to be able to also use, like, let's say, wealth acquisition potions, right?
Yeah.
And, well, what if you're going to be using wealth, but you don't have Meso and drop gear yet? Ideally, you want to have them, like, together, and that's even more value within your totems, right? And as your totems and your times within totems become more of a limited resource, you're trying to get the efficiency out there. And again, you don't want this to be like the single guiding principle of what do I do with my time. But if you can, you know, at least give yourself the opportunity to, or at least be aware of those options, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. I mean, definitely as far as like totems go, I have been popping them mainly just for the experience, but it would be nice to kind of maximize more on, you know, the Meso obtain and things like that. Getting more nodes from the drop gear, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, so
I have been kind of buying out the nodes from the shop.
Yeah, definitely want to do that. Yeah,
with that.
Yeah, those are super important. So in the same way that you kind of see your weapon secondary and emblem kind of like one chunk of stat, right?
Yeah.
Kind of in a similar way, you want to see all of your accessories, so like the rings, the two pendants, Iron Face, and the earrings, as one clump as well. So you have the fear of going down, and I definitely get that, especially, you know, if you're already unique and have already invested. But you want to see them as one like lateral move. So right now, your total amount of ideally, what you get to is like 4 lines of drop, 5 lines of Meso, and then everything has at least like a 6 or a 9% of strength, right? That's most likely what you'll end up with as like your set. So 9 pieces, let's say at least 6, so that's about 54% strength coming out of that. So if you compare that to what you have now coming out of all of your accessories, that's going to be a step down, but it's probably not as significant of a step down as you think. Because it's like 6... In total, it might be like 20 to like 30% strength. But at the same time, you're going to be moving towards Abso stuff, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm working on that right now, actually.
So, like, there's going to be some gains, you know, on the shoes, some gains on the cape that doesn't have anything yet, gains on the glove, maybe the shoulder. We'll get some gains, right? So those percentages are going to be filled in. And then the base stats of those equips are going to go up. And the set bonus is also going to go up. So the damage is going to be filled, because boost nodes, you know, that's final damage. Arcane power, that's final damage. That is going to increase also the efficiency of all those other stats that are coming. It's going to make those hit harder. So you're definitely at the point where you can start moving into the drop and Meso stuff. But again, you're only doing that one equip at a time, right? As you make money. So it's also not like from one moment to the next that you're losing everything. And of course, as you keep leveling, you know, you get closer in levels to the monsters, which means you also deal more final damage. You get more EXP, so you level up a little bit faster. And you, what's the last thing I was going to say? Oh yeah, and you get more hyper step points, which will also allow you to do more damage. And then add Legion and Links into that mix. And I don't know, hopefully I can like illustrate that it might feel like you're going to lose out on a lot of damage, but you're not going to, because that's going to be filled in by a lot of other things. You know?
Yeah, that makes sense as far as like my other placeholders like my shoes and cape and shoulders, that would definitely get up there once I get them replaced.
And the heart, right? Once you get the heart, that's a bunch of stat that you can get there.
Yeah.
Because the way you want to think about it is, let's say that you unequipped your Reboot Cosmos ring. Would you really notice that if you unequipped one ring?
No.
Right. But what if you got drop and Meso on
no.
it? Like, would you notice it in your rates if you had like one line of Meso compared to having 0? You would notice that.
I probably will, because
yeah.
I usually get like close to nothing right now, so.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But would you like, would you recommend, let's say, even though I don't have the replacements for like the Absol yet, I should be getting them in like a month and a half or whatever. But would you recommend re-rolling the rings, like all the rings?
Yeah. And because eventually all of these become drop and Meso rings anyway. And the fewer times you have to re-roll the purpose of an item, the better for reboot, because then it becomes clearer what you need to get to the next step, right? Like, let's say that you're gonna probably roll one ring to like, I don't know, to like 27 or to like 30% stat. That's gonna accidentally happen. Well, then that becomes your damage ring. But then you know you need a ring, so then you can actively start looking for a ring, right? Maybe you get the Sol ring, maybe you do like a side thing, maybe you get the what's it called, like Treasure Hunter John ring and NLC, right? Just have something to fill the slot up with. But if you know that it's going to be a drop or Meso ring, you also know not to aim for anything outside of that, because eventually these rings are like, and especially the Awake ring, right? It's like equivalent of like a 17-star ring, which is really nice early on. But eventually you're going to move past, but you need the backups for that first, right? And you need the money. So these have the function of getting you there with high base stats so that you can rely on the drop and the Meso from the potential to get you to that point where you can have those other rings, Star Force them beyond, and then they can take over damage-wise, and then you can work on the potential, which you can only afford because you have the drop and Meso on the earlier rings. So yeah, one ring at a time. If it's already legendary, it's the cheapest, right? So just reroll, and it can immediately start increasing your income. And then one at a time, just the things that are already unique. And the faster you transition them from where they are now to drop and Meso, the less damage you lose from them, right? And the more efficient the jump will be, because it's going to be a bigger jump in one go.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also usually, because my nodes are so low, like my skill, my final damage on my nodes, I usually stay on the maps before that I'm supposed to get. Because right now I could go to Arcana, but I'll stay at Rev 3.
Yeah.
Just because I clear it faster and it feels more fluid. But yeah, as far as like nodes and things like that go, I'm still kind of trying to figure out like what nodes I should be keeping as far as boost nodes. Because I see a lot of like guides on YouTube, and they have 2 or 3 boost nodes in their VMatrix, but I have yet to get any of the nodes that are identical to theirs. So this is probably like the best node I've found out of all of them.
Yeah, at least they're all useful. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, so there's a few schools of thought there. You feel like we're good on the Meso and the drop rate topic?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I already wrote down like the goals for that. So
yeah, you can also double check exclamation mark drop rate. I can send you the link. Basically, that goes a little bit more into detail of like where you want to get the lines and everything, but also how everything stacks, because there's like a difference between Meso drop rate, item drop rate, Meso obtained. Those are all like different metrics. How you count them, how you stack them, also how they interact with familiars. Has a bit more detailed numbers and goals and stuff, so that might help you as well. Visualize that a bit. Yeah, so for the VMatrix, I've got this thing with like all of the tri-nodes that people want. Some classes have like, preference based on playstyle for people. Oh, I should actually, now that I see this, edit, freeze, view, I should probably freeze this up to bam, so that if people scroll, they always see this. There you go. Yeah, some is playstyle preference. Some are, you'll find some aberrations right here and there. If your character, and then some specifically have like these ones are only for mobbing and these ones only for bossing, and then it comes down to efficiency again. Early on, if you're leveling fast early on, your skill nodes, typically very low level. Some classes can do a lot of damage with not too many skill nodes, which means you get slots for boost nodes open, which means that if you need more than one pair of tri-nodes, you can mix and match, basically. And when I say that, I mean just make sure that all of the skills that are mentioned here are in there twice each, right, in 4 nodes, and it doesn't have to be exactly the same combination. When it matters a bit more is if you have specific bossing or mobbing, it is decently highly advised to keep them separate, because then that means that whether you're mobbing or bossing, you're always only using 2 slots for boost nodes, which means you leave maximum slots over for skill nodes, which means optimizing damage specifically when you're bossing. And yeah, that's basically the thought behind it. So if you find that you're leveling pretty quickly, you're throwing nodes in just because you have space and you don't even know, maybe even things you don't even use because you have so much space, that probably means you're getting closer and closer to being able to mix and match. What I realized from my hero, because I've recently, because of this swap with Destiny, started moving into making 4 boost nodes for him. Because before I had 4, but the other 2 were like level 7 or 8 or something, because I wasn't really using them. I had like Rush and Shout, like old skills.
Okay.
But it was basically just, using the 2 main ones, which was, what is it, like Raging Blow and Final Attack and then Rising Range. But now with the setup, I've heard that people want to move Cry Valhalla into the main one and use Rising Range more as the into the second one. That it is relegated more to quote unquote like a mobbing skill, and that and Cry Valhalla is more like a part of the boss one. Sometimes what also happens is people will make a combination node in terms like if you're a dual blade, for example. And you'll make like Phantom Blow, Blade Fury, and Ursula's Anger. So you have like your top mobbing skill and your top bossing skill in the same node. So you only need 2 nodes to boost everything. And then later you can transition out. And this is possible because of how the node enhancement works, right? As long as the top skill is the same, you can enhance another node with it. But that's not restricted to just level 1 nodes. You can make a level 25 node, and then later if you find the right configuration, you can just use the level 25 node to level up the new tri-node you find, and then as long as it has the same top skill, and immediately level it up to 25. It carries over all of the efficiency.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So
that was a big question I had, because I didn't want to, waste leveling it up this one with I didn't know you could transfer the level, so that's cool.
So as long as the node starts with one of those 6 skills that you want, you would hold on to them. If it doesn't start with one of those 6, you'd extract them, right? That's like your first filter. And then once you have, in the beginning, at least 2 out of 3, but ideally you find 2 tri-nodes that start with one of those 3 skills in the priority tri-node. Then you can start leveling them. And then as long as those 2 are skills that you're eventually going to do, you can still, fuse them up later together and you're fine. The downside of like, if you have a 2 out of 3, but the top skill is not one that you want, you can level it, but I usually wouldn't advise leveling it past like level 6 or 7, because then you would have to disassemble them, and then you do get reduced efficiency, and you get like just a fraction of the shards back. So that's not as advised.
Oh, okay. So I should get one of my boost nodes, Raging Blow, as the prio line, right?
If it has Raging Blow prio, and then either Cry Valhalla or Final Attack as like the second or third, then you can start leveling that one up already. There's always a small chance that if you want to find the perfect tries, that you end up with even if it's your main skill, Raging Blow, you could end up with tri-nodes that just don't have Raging Blow as the top skill, but Raging Blow is just like a second or third in the other ones. That is possible, but once you do find it and you start leveling it, you're probably just going to end up like creating more of the boost nodes to see if you can make them, right? And then if you make a tri-node like that, you just get the higher level into the lower level and transition it over, and then you're set. But it is possible that you'll end up opening a different one, but it's a lower chance because all the other ones you're already throwing away. You're only keeping those good ones.
Yeah, I never really had like a filter on what to disassemble and things like that. So this was really helpful for sure.
Yeah, as it comes to skill nodes, the things you can always disassemble, at least for you, is decent Hyper Body, decent Mystic Door, and are you using auto buff?
Yeah, I have
for the decent
all like
skills.
The Sharp Eye.
Yeah,
all of them are on my pets.
Yeah. It's kind of up to personal taste, but I would advise early on when every single node is so valuable, that apart from decent holy symbol, all the other decent skills you can also disassemble as long as you just keep one level 1.
Okay, like rope lift, of course, like a disassemble and things like that.
Yeah, rope lift is a little bit a case of its own. Like if it levels rope lift, it gives you 1 stat. So if you max it, that's 25 stat. But that's a pretty late in endgame shit when that becomes a difference.
That's what I was looking
but like
at.
the blink, the blink cooldown goes down pretty significantly. So that one I would level. Sorry, not blink. The bind, right, or the nova, and then holy symbol gives you more exp and more drop rate as it levels up. So I would definitely level those. But the other decents that you would use would be decent combat orders, decent speed infusion, and decent sharp eyes. You don't have to level those, so you can extract the extra ones. Because because if you use auto buff, it's always going to auto buff like outside of your power anyway, so you don't have to. Basically, in the past we would level them so that you wouldn't have to manually recast them like during your burst or something, right? Because then it would interrupt your damage. But if it's going to auto rebuff anyway, it already has 100% uptime, so there's no real point in leveling it.
Right, it makes sense for sure. Also for like the experience nodes, is it ideal just to level up the HS?
For most classes, yes. I think in your case, you probably want to use it on Burning Soulblade, right? BSB, RSB.
Okay, Burning Soulblade.
Yeah,
okay.
Because the uptime goes up on that skill, and it's for both for mobbing and bossing. Your like really good skill. Like you can place it down in the map, right, when you're training, and then hop around, and it'll just kill around it. So you can use it as a summon as long as you don't go too far away from it. And you want the increased uptime so you can cycle Burning Soulblade into Cry Valhalla, into Burning Soulblade, and then into Instinctual Combo, and then back into Burning Soulblade. Once the Burning Soulblade levels, you'll always have one of those empowerments up, and you'll be able to just more comfortably go through the map and have a better uptime while you're throwing out all the other AoEs.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense because there is somewhat of a gap right now.
Yeah, exactly,
like,
and that'll
semi-burst.
That gets cleared by leveling up the Burning Soulblade. Another thing that I want to make sure, I don't think you've enhanced any of your slots, right?
No, I've just been leveling for it.
Because on the right side, you see slot enhancement in your matrix. You see that?
Yeah.
You see like a big number under there, 25.
Yeah, 25, yeah.
Yeah, so if you click slot enhancement, you can select your slots that have skills in them and level them up, which will essentially level up any the level of any skill that is equipped in that slot. So that's very useful early on to put your boost nodes into. So if you have just level 3 and a level 1 boost node, that's just 4 levels. But if you put them both in a level 5 slot, well, now you have level 14. So now you have 28% final damage versus 8% final damage. So you're gaining like 10% there on those boost nodes that are in there. So
it's the slot, not the skill itself, right?
Yeah, and any boost node, any node that goes in there just gets those 5 levels. So priority would be to put your boost nodes in there first, and then your Burning Soulblade and your Holy Symbol would be the most important skills to put in there.
Okay, for sure.
So yeah, sometimes people will cheat early on if they don't need very many skill nodes. Sometimes they'll equip like 8 boost nodes or something, right? Just all have like duplicates out the ass, and then put them all in leveled up slots, and you can get so much free final damage that way.
Yeah, I have not even thought of that right now. I forgot what the matrix points were. But so you said the order of boost nodes, then Burning Soulblade.
Yeah, and then Holy Symbol, and then probably whatever skill node after that. Maybe Weapon Aura. Weapon Aura also gains uptime with level. So that's usually where the most value is. Or and Instinctual Combo is also pretty important, of course, really big burst skill. But that's generally the order. So typically you just level 1 slot to 5, and then you move on to the next slot. And as long as you have that priority in mind, you just can move the non on cooldown skills around very easily, and Bob's your uncle. For your current configuration, I don't know how married you are to rope lift, because we have that up jump and we have that sword slash, right? I think decent speed infusion is probably what you want to have in there instead.
I just discovered that that skill that makes you jump to the enemies, like,
Yeah.
and I've just been using it, and I was like, okay, I need to figure out what to replace rope lift now, because since I don't even use it anymore.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, in some situations you'll still use it, like in Lucid you might use it to get to platforms, but I got used to just not using it at all. I don't really miss it, but in some map rotations it might be useful. Yeah.
But you said
Decent.
combat orders is a good replacement.
I put decent speed infusion before it just to get the extra attack speed. It'll help you just get around the map a little bit more easily when you're mobbing, and for bossing it'll allow you to respond a bit faster to not getting stuck. And then decent combat orders is probably after that. Yeah.
Oh wow, yeah, I forgot that speed infusion does that. Oh, and it's 100% uptime too, right?
Yep. Yeah, and you put that on your auto buff if you have room, and you have and you're using the two-handed sword. Yeah, so your attack speed now is actually quite low. Are you using green pots from Monster Park when you're training?
Yeah, I'm trying to be more religious doing Monster Park nowadays. So
it's a good habit to get into, because so if you're starting with two-handed sword, because you're two-handed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're starting with two-handed sword, you are basically at a -4, what you want to, or at a 4, and you want to get it to a 0. Okay. So the 4 that you need to get is 1 from inner ability, 1 from decent speed infusion, and then 2 from the green pot. 1 from itself, and then 1 that it allows you to go past the barrier, basically. So you'd be at a 3, sorry, at a 3. But basically only one of the other 2 sources, either speed infusion or your inner ability, will work until you also apply a green pot, because you'll get stuck at 2. That's like the soft cap. You probably heard about that.
Right.
So if you're going for if you're getting a green pot, you'll go to 2, and then if you have a green pot on, then your decent speed infusion will make you go to 1, which is very close to the fastest you can get. But yeah, the inner ability, which we'll probably get into a little bit later, inner ability is like the main thing that will you'll kind of be more reliant on if you're at two-handed. Usually I advise people early on for heroes to stick to one-handed, so you can get to 0 attack speed and get used to that, you know, how fast that is and everything, because then that frees up your inner ability to go for Meso obtain, and then you can make more money as you're leveling in the beginning of the game. And then once you're like settling into like, I've made enough money, you know, I want to min-max on my stuff, I want to do the harder bosses, I'm switching to a two-handed sword to optimize my damage and to min-max on that. Then you and then you have the honor experience to actually make your inner ability do that. Then you can redo your inner ability and then get that attack speed out of the top line. But you'll be fine with like a lesser attack speed, because you've been fine so far, right? And you're only going to get faster with the decent speed infusion, and if you keep the green pots up. So it's still an improvement, and then the attack speed later will just be another improvement on top of that.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. Yeah, I've been doing like I was already pretty used to like just the green pots, but I always forget that I have like other stuff to get faster with, more efficient and whatnot.
Yeah, and yeah, there's always like commands for that. There's an attack speed command, inner ability command. It's all like kind of interconnected. What were we saying? Yeah, so decent speed infusion and then decent combat order is also pretty useful. Yeah, and if you're mobbing, of course, you're not using the Urda Nova at all. And some skill nodes at level 1 might not be as impactful, but you aren't at that point yet. Heroes are all pretty fucking useful. There's nothing really that bad. Like, you've got the Goddess Blessing is really good to combine with your burst. But yeah, you definitely want to make room for at least one more boost node, yeah.
Okay, for sure. No, yeah, I'm definitely going to be working on that then, and trying to have only Raging Blow for Prio, right?
Yeah, Raging Blow Prio, yeah. Yeah, later you basically just start throwing AoEs out everywhere. You got that shell, right? That shield thing that you can create as an explosion around you. That's like an extra mobbing skill. So people will start using Urda Shower, yeah. You'll just start throwing all the AoEs that you possibly can just to have some kind of semblance of map clear on the hero. Although, yeah, the Blade Flash is actually quite a nice extra addition to the stuff. Hero doesn't need rope lift. In some situations you might, but there's always like a comparative advantage to a slot. Your matrix slots are very valuable early on. Like, do you need rope lift? Rope lift is purely mobility. If your map requires it for your rotation, then it might be better. But most maps, at least, and I trained to 250 on my hero, you don't need a rope lift at all to do good rotations. Which means you get to put an extra boost node or skill node in, which means you get to do more damage with your skills, which means you don't need to get better gear on your accessories, and you can get better meso and drop, which means in the same amount of time you get to make more money, right? That's how it's
sick. That was sick.
That's how the whole thing is like connected together, and it just seems like, do
crazy.
you really need rope lift? But yeah, it opens up a path for like a completely different way of progressing through the game faster. And
yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Definitely could compensate from other areas, you know, that I'm gonna be downgrading from, like the drop gear and whatnot. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and just the final damage on boost nodes is so important. And once you get those levels in there, you'll notice how insignificant, quote unquote, the strength lines on your accessories are now compared to how much damage can come from boost nodes. But yeah, nodes it's a slow build up. But so it's good that you're buying them from the event shop. Definitely event shop, and definitely, you know, make sure you do Vanishing Journey twice a week to get those free nodes. But as your drop rate builds up, you'll just get more nodes when you're training, right? As you level up your holy symbol, you get more nodes from training directly. So that'll just you know, hopefully start snowballing and getting you a lot of extra damage there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So also, I heard that there was gonna be like another Shining event coming soon, but I also
winter probably, so like 6 months from now.
Oh, okay, man. And my guildies been telling me like, oh, 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's another 5, 10, 15 event. So let's say that you didn't have the budget to fix things all the way to 17. It would be okay to just wait at 15 so that you can use the event in 3 weeks to get 15 to 17. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
it's like a half Shining, yeah.
half. Okay,
yeah.
For sure. Damn, what was I gonna say?
In terms of upgrading, well, because we basically told you like start spending all your money on your accessories, right? Which basically means your Star Force is going to be neglected for a while, but that's good because of how you want to. You want to, if you move into Abzo, if you move into Superior Gollux, those are the next big upgrades you're going to be making, right? Ideally, for both of those, you want to fodder lower level gear without safeguarding, get it to 15, ideally during a 30% off. And then sit on it, wait for a 5, 10, 15, tap them up to 16, then transfer them, tap those guys up to 16 again, the Superior and the Gollux, and then safeguard the last star. If you do that, you save about 500, 550 mil per piece, which is, you know, 4 pieces of Gollux and 5 pieces of Abzo, so that's 9 pieces, 9 times 550 mil, that's like 5 bill that you're saving, and then you can spend 5 extra bill on your potential and on your flames. Ideally on your flames on your weapon, and okay flames on all of the Abzo, no flames on the Gollux because that's garbage, but on the potential on all of those things. And yeah, that'll free up a whole lot of space. And then you're looking at, you know, soloing Lotus and Damien and joining Lucid parties.
For sure. And also, as far as fodder gear goes, I barely started learning about this not too long ago, but either the same, it has to be either the same level or 10 levels below.
Has to be within, has to be lower level, and be within. It's like within 20 levels for very low levels. I think up to 110 or something, and then it has to be within 10 levels. Yeah.
Okay, within 10 levels. Right.
Yeah. So I have the Transfer Hammer video. Whoa, same shirt. Where I talk about that. And it also it talks about like what the kind of projects are that you could be starting to work on later, and then which dailies and weeklies that means that you want to be doing so that you can be prepared once the event comes around and you have the money. You want to make sure that at that point you also already have the items, right, and have the backups. So this talks about like what gets transferred over, what doesn't get transferred over, and then it looks at different stages of the game, like which items. So here it talks about the restrictions, right? This is level 80 and level 100. Typically has to be the exact same type of item, right? It doesn't have to be for the same class. It just has to be the same type of item. So if you have like, I don't know, like a mage hat that's level 130 or something for some reason, and you have then a what goes for again? Yeah, warrior warrior hat 140. You could transfer that over because it's a hat. That's what matters. So like the type of weapon has to be the same type of weapon. The only exception is like with overalls is that tops and bottoms both go into overalls, and overalls goes into both tops and bottoms. But tops and bottoms don't go into each other, except, well, in other situations. But we're talking about MapleStory now. So that is all like worked out here in like yeah, like what you keep, what you hold, what you're focusing on, which pieces. Didn't I have like pictures as well? Dude, I should have better visual aids. This is an old video. On like which items you're actively looking for to make sure that you don't kind of. Let's say there's something you could be doing, right? Like 5 minutes every day that could make it so that once you get to a certain point in the game, you can just continue rather than now you have to start it up when you want to be actively already participating in it, right? It's kind of like working on your professions or working on your crafting or like harvesting your flowers. If you start doing that from day one, you spend like a few minutes a day doing that. Once you want to craft stuff, you probably have like a pile of materials and you can just make it immediately, right? But if you're like, now I want to make stuff, what are professions even? And then you have to start, then it feels like nothing drops. Because if you really are looking for something, you can't get it, right? But you get it all the time if you're not actively looking for it. So, and that's, of course, crazy like personal bias and everything, but we all work the same way in that sense. So it's good to just get started early with it and do the preparation so that when it comes push comes to shove, and I talk about this a lot in progression sessions, because what will happen is you'll get unlucky with like 1 or 2 types of drops. It'll just won't work out for you. But what won't happen is that you'll get unlucky with all the drops. There will always be something that's like, hey, this, you have a lot of backups here, like this is the lowest risk for you to upgrade. And as long as you try to do most of those things on most days, you know, not like every single day, everything, what will happen is when you do come to an event and you have money, the backups will just show you what you need to do. And this goes back into what I was talking about before. Now the choice or the overwhelmingness of like I have to do so much gets taken away because you can't do everything, because you just don't have any opportunity. So you focus on those projects that you can do with all the backups, and then you probably run out of money, which means that next time you probably work on the other projects because then you had extra time to get backups for that.
Right, makes sense. Also, would you now that I'm thinking about it, I probably should have tried to Star Force my Fafnir to 15, I mean, or at least 15, because I could transfer that to the APSO, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know if you had backup though, and like,
I have one backup for the Fafnir.
Okay.
Yeah,
that would have been that probably would have been ideal if you can tap it to 15, because then with the 5, 10, 15 coming, if you can get the weapon by then, you can 16 transfer 16 safeguard to 17, and boom, you're immediately ready to pick. In this situation, I mean, you can still try to go 12 to 15 during 5, 10, 15. So where that all comes from is from the maths. I've worked with it a lot, so a lot of the stuff makes sense to me, like automatically, like intuitively. But basically what we're talking about is 115 type, no star catch, no safeguard, 12, 15 during 5, 10, 15, right? Like if you would do that, it's about 310, 420 mil. During the Shining, because of the extra discount, would be about like 30%, 35% cheaper. But we're talking about the equivalent of like getting it. So ideally, there we go, right? Getting up to 16. So that's like this amount of money, and then into 160, change 15 into 17 with safeguard. Like this is like a total cost, right? With the alternative being 160 with safeguard all the way from 0 to 17, probably also during 5, 10, 15. So it's like, in total you get to like around a bill. The other one's like around 1.4. It might, defer a little bit, but that's without the 30% off on the lower end. And that's why this makes sense. But also a lot of it comes from what makes sense in terms of risk, accessibility of items. And another one is safeguarding previous... safeguarding is maybe a bad word because of star forcing, but trying to maintain previous investments. Because if you don't transfer hammer this weapon in, because you don't want to lose the legendary potential, for example, right? Because it'll go down to epic if you're transfer hammering with it. What else is it going to do? It's just going to sit in your inventory and gather dust, right? I mean, if you have like a strong nostalgic value on it, you can decide to do that. It's not the end of the world. It's not a crazy investment overall in your progression. But, why not use it to give yourself a boost on the Abzo and immediately start with epic potential and stars,
Right, it makes sense. Yeah, so that sounds like the plan then, as far as because for sure, like, I do want to prio on my WSE, and that's where most of my damage is coming from. So as soon as I get the set going, that'll be good to work on. And if I can immediately get that 17 Absol weapon, that'll be sick.
Yeah, yeah, but I would say the prio is definitely to drop into Meso gear. That might take a while.
Yeah.
But you know, that's also with me calculating like your Star Force being lower, and that your CRA is probably also still at like 11 or 12 stars, right? But now you've got like an extra, I don't know how much it is exactly, but like 30, 40 stat per piece, and like 20 weapon attack each. That's already a nice little buffer of extra stuff you've got as well going for you. That'll, you know, be able to cushion the blow from the accessories losing some stat.
Yeah, and also the VMatrix upgrades too.
Yeah, even just, you know, leveling up the grids and putting an extra boost node in, that just like that, that'll be like 10, 12, 15% final damage on your main skills, which is such a huge part of your damage, way more so than, or percentage points final damage, I should say. But on top of 6, you know, is pretty close to that.
Right.
It's so much bigger gains than the losses of like 9% or maybe 12% stat on an accessory. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, everything's starting to make sense now on like what I should be doing and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, should is like a strong word. I like to just put the information out there, and then as long as you have the information, you can make your own decisions, you know, because it's your time, it's your life, like you do what you want to do. But I would hate decisions to be made out of like ignorance rather than out of just like, you know, if you don't care, you don't care. That's totally cool with me. But if you just don't know what your options are, that's always, yeah, I would try to avoid that as much as possible. Yeah.
For sure, yeah. I do feel like now it's more such a like in a direction at least, you know. So definitely helpful.
Yep. Yeah. So with the Legion and Links, you know, stuff like your what I call like kind of like the fundamental stats will start coming more, right? So like the crit rate, the ID, the boss damage, critical damage, like those stats. And as your Legion keeps growing, you'll move towards the outer side of the Legion board way more. Right? You'll start moving away from the middle actually, because comparatively the attack and the strength scales pretty poorly compared to like getting more critical rate, getting more critical damage. And then IED once you start bossing more, and then boss damage if you have anything left over. So you'll want to redo the grid eventually. If you're growing quickly, you can do it like, you know, whenever you make a big jump. The Legion, the Link skill, what was it saying? Oh yeah, the Legion solver is like the third thing that we didn't really get into, but there's also a solver here that somebody made, Xenogent made, where you, if you want to like, oh, like I want to max out my critical rate and my and like go to critical damage, you can put in like which characters you have and how much of the board you can fill and how many characters can go in, and then based on that it'll just tell you like, oh, that's how you know, no solution found. Okay, well, whatever. It's probably because archers, I don't know. Based on what you have, it'll pretty much always shit out a solution, but you know, maybe the shapes are just not desirable. But yeah.
So this would like count up like how many blocks you have available, and then
yeah, whatever you have, you put in
right?
here. So that'll be like how much number of characters. That'll be that. So you want so the priority is you want your best member bonuses are most important. And second most important is the size of your blocks, so the biggest blocks, because that'll give you grid bonus. And then the third most important will be how much Legion power those characters have if they're the same size, basically. So based on that priority, you want to look at how many characters you can put in. So that's 12 at this point, and get up to make sure that it gets to those 12 based on that priority, right? And then based on which pieces it are, it'll tell you that's how many spaces you can fill. And then you can do board spaces. You can put them however you want, where the priority is. So priority would be first critical rate, then critical damage, then IED, then boss damage, basically. And if you're mobbing, it would be critical rate, then boss damage, and then probably bonus EXP. you can make definitely an argument for damage to normal monsters before EXP, but with the way that the power creep in the game works, I think that's only necessary if you're either really, really early in the game, really, really weak, so you're already way past that point, or if you are going into like Cernium, Burning Cernium, Hotel Arcus, and you want to get there as fast as possible, and you have a huge Legion where you have, you know, availability of over all of those stats, then you probably want to go into damage to normal monsters, because those guys, you know, imagine like being level 280 and going into, you know, into Asphera, but having 0 arcane power. That's basically what it feels like.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. So you're saying usually for hero it's crit rate.
It's for
as
everyone.
One of the prios for everyone. Okay, yeah.
But it's a prio, so you look for crit rate. You're already at 100% crit rate. Cool. You don't need anything. Move to the next one, right? But like, let's say that your hyperstat is at 10 or at 11 or something, just to get enough crit rate, but you have nothing in your Legion board. Well, it probably makes sense to put like 6 or 7 or 8 blocks into your critical rate, because that takes a whole lot of hyperstat points off of critical rate, right? And then you can move those hyperstats into other stuff instead. If you're mobbing, you can put it into bonus EXP, you know, and maintain the same kill speed. That'll be way more valuable, because in like a bonus EXP, it's a 0.5%. No, it's 1% for every 4 squares, so it's 0.25%, right? So filling all 40 is 10%, but critical rate is 1-to-1. So you want to, yeah, and as you move that stuff around, you'll feel like, okay, you know, once you're moving your hyperstats like past 10, past 11, past 12, that basically means that going up to level 8 in your hyperstats is absolutely free, because it's less than 1 level on the other ones, just combined, right? So at that point, if you need a stat at all, you probably always want to have like level 6, 7, or 8 at least, because it's just free. And then you start building the other ones where it's less free, you start building around that. And critical rate is one of those where, you know, it's not necessarily free, because you could move it into boss damage and get a whole bunch. But you couldn't really move like 200 hyperstat points around, because that gets pretty pricey. So, yeah, on the board, it's 1-to-1. The most important thing is just like your WSE for your potentials on your WSE, right? Like that's locked in. So as long as you know where that's going, you build around that. So right now you're getting a lot of crit rate from that, right? You have 2 9% lines. So that means that either if you have a link skill that you don't have yet that can give crit rate, you have to build around that. If your hyperstat isn't maxed out yet, you have to build around that. But probably your Legion members and your Legion grid is probably where the crit rate is going to have to come from before you can roll out of that. Because you might not notice it, but you're relying pretty heavily on that crit rate. And, well, you probably tried at least like kill things one time without your link skills on, and you'd notice how you just absolutely are like hitting with a pool noodle instead of actually doing damage, right?
Dude, for real.
Yeah. Like the Phantom Link skill is not on, and it's like you're not even attacking. Crit rate is just so important, because it applies crit damage, and crit damage is one of the biggest multipliers earlier in the game that you have access to. So.
Yeah, for some reason, like I always hear about crit damage, so that's literally probably one of the first things I tried to been maxing out. But I just realized that my crit rate isn't 100% uptime unless I have my Cry of Valhalla.
Exactly. Yeah. And then if it isn't at 100% uptime, you're not getting the full efficiency out of it. So you want to build the foundation of crit rate first before you start building on that foundation. And the crit rate and critical damage are very similar in concept to like ignore defense and damage, right? Because you need more penetration to make sure your damage commits. And once you have enough penetration, then you want to increase your damage so that it goes through. And it's also very similar to or like to item drop rate or Meso drop rate specifically, and Meso obtain. You want to get more money from the bags with Meso obtain, cool. But you want to also make sure first that all of the monsters even drop a bag in the first place, right? And they amplify each other. They need each other to work.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm trying to think of how I can, because I know eventually, probably later on, like I'll have to re-roll my emblem and stuff like that.
Yep.
And I know I'm going to be losing out on that 18% crit rate. So, let's see. Legion is a way I'll be able to get the crit rate up there, and also trying to figure out what else.
So Legion member bonus, and then Legion. Well, you know what? You have a question? Exclamation mark crit in the chat. Here, we have crit rate sources and crit damage sources. So you can just pull up crit rate sources. So one is hyperstats, very important. Then you have link skills. So you already have. I don't know if you have both of them. Do you have the Beast Tamer and the Zero made, by the way?
Yeah, I just made them a few days ago, so they're ready to go.
So like if you use the adventurers, so the archer blessing, that can go up to 10% if you have it totally maxed at level 6, and then a level 3 beast tamer will also be 10%, and then the phantom could go up to level 3, which would be 20. So between those three, that's 40% crit rate possibly. So you know, at a certain point you might need that, quote unquote, but then eventually, you know, the archer one, you want to move out of that because it's just 10 crit and doesn't give anything else. The beast tamer is 10 crit and is 10% boss damage, so when you're bossing, that's pretty nice, but when you're mobbing, they're essentially the same. So that's how,
that makes sense.
In your head you kind of look at like, what is a priority, what is the next thing that is the least valuable that you have that you could move out of and make an upgrade for. And then you have Legion Grid, which is most likely something you'll have to invest in early on, especially if you tend to maybe want to roll out of those crit rate lines. Then you have Legion Members, right? So that's Marksman and Night Lord. That will give you crit based on their level. But again, that's back in this one, right? You can see crit rate here, and then you can see the link skills and the Legion. So that's basically this blob right here. So you see the Phantom, Beast Tamer, Marksman for both, Night Lord, Bowmaster, Pathfinder for the link skill, right? So that's how you can find them very, very quickly. So then it has the links here as well, right? So you can find exclamation mark hyperstats, advice on how to do that, Legion, how to build, decent sharp eyes, you already have that one, that's 10%, that's very useful. Then inner ability, that's something that's most likely not going to come into play for quite a while. We haven't really gotten into inner ability. Are you familiar with that subject? Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, sure. I know that I'm supposed to be aiming for the +1 attack speed, but and I see a lot of like bundled in with the attack speed line, and the other two would be like dropper, meso.
Yeah. Those are definitely, I would say, if you hit any of those, that's good. If you hit attack speed, there is the risk of attack speed doing the same thing for you as the potential on the rings did, in the sense that you get used to that, and then it gets worse to get rid of it. Even though technically, mathematically, you don't really need it just yet. Getting the drop rate will just help you get the nodes faster, which is very important, and getting meso obtained will, you know, get money faster, obviously. And it's not until you do like the much more difficult bosses where you're just expected to be more mobile and just expected to do better and get that high ass attack speed that you really need to move into the attack speed. So you can just see it as one of the outs, but don't see it as like the only thing that's like real. And this goes into, when you talk about inner abilities, goes into kind of like having more of a, what I would say, like a mid-game or an early late-game inner ability. Because with inner ability, you're limited to your resource of honor experience. And people usually kind of get baited into rolling a lot of honor early on because you get a lot early on, just from leveling.
Yeah.
But then once you roll that, you notice that it's not coming back as quickly, and it's like, oh,
dude, for sure.
maybe I shouldn't have wasted all of that, which might be your situation. I'm not trying to accuse you of anything, but it's a very normal thing to happen, because it's basically, you know, when you're mobbing, you get it back, but again, you need drop rate for that to start scaling. You can buy it in event shops, but early on you typically have a bunch of other stuff on your mind than buying honor experience from event shops. And you gotta get it in dojo, but you need to be top 70% to get decent points to be able to even afford it, right? So all the other sources are kind of gated, and you do weekly bosses, but of course you need to be pretty strong to do a lot of weekly bosses. So a lot of those other sources exist, but they start rolling in pretty slowly. So in general, I would say early on, you know, you basically roll a lot with circulators, just as a way of basically buying honor experience with meso. And that gives you the ability to just save up your honor for when you are going to move from like a more casual, more early, more mid-game inner ability to like an end game or like fully late game or end game inner ability. And the way you would, so we talked about the outs, right? If you can get attack speed or meso or drop, if you get attack speed, you ideally want to keep rolling so that you can at least get like epic lines of meso and or drop. So, you know, you get like green, purple, purple, maybe a gold line. maybe a unique line. If you roll Meso or drop, then try to roll at least one of the other two in an epic line, and then you're basically golden. Like, that's going to be good all the way until you want to min max. And then when you want to min max, ideally you throw up circulators and try to get your unique line that you need. So you'll be at like number 4B here. So throw circulators to get your perfect unique line. And you can see that in Ability, like the best in slot guide. And you've guessed it, for you, that is going to be critical rate. Because that will allow you to get a lot of your crit rate away from other sources. Now, if you by then have like an 8k, or because of the changes coming from KMS, right, like an 8.5k Legion or something, that basically allows you to build like the same Legion that I have. And if you have the same ship size, of course you can check it here, Legion that I have, that means you have the freedom, especially if you're maining hero, because you don't need buff duration, you have the ability to move into a lot of critical rate, which essentially makes it so that you don't need to worry about the inner ability as much, and then you can actually skip it and go for 10% boss, 21 attack, and like 8%, what is it, 8% damage from debuffed. Maybe, I don't know, maybe this one should be here, this one should be here. What the hell did I just do? Oh, I went to the end. Right, because that's a way to like min-max, getting even more damage out of your inner ability. And once you hit the unique line with the circulators, then you lock that one in, and then you roll with your honor experience that you've saved up to get that attack speed on the top line. If you're two-handed. If you're one-handed, you technically don't have to. So what a one-handed user might do is I might go for the damage debuffed and the attack, then lock that, go for 20% boss on the top, and then try to donkey roll, locking those two lines to get something useful out of the third line, basically.
Right.
That's because the circulators always roll the highest percentage within, so they don't have variance. So that way you can make sure that you can get the highest possible unique value out of the line.
Okay, for sure, that makes sense. Yeah, that'll be sick if I could get 20 crit on that.
Mm-hmm.
So just to retouch on circulators, I don't really understand it as well, but basically it's, if you get a circulator, you could roll, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a higher chance to tier up the line.
Yes, you can tier up your inner ability itself. Every single roll has an average chance, whether it's with honor or with a circulator, has just a certain percentage chance of being rare, percentage of being epic, and unique, and legendary. That's predetermined. That doesn't change. But you're basically buying a free roll with a circulator, and you're re-rolling all of the lines, so that saves you honor. But you also have the ability to pick your previous result with the circulator. You don't have to pick the new one.
Okay. It's like a black cube, right?
With the miracle. Yeah, exactly, like a black cube. There's also, though, a black circulator. There's also a chaos circulator. So there's 4 circulators we have access to. There's a legendary one that just makes your inner ability legendary in the event shop, but it's pretty expensive. It's more priced towards non-reboot, where they have to pay real money for circulators. There's the miracle circulator, so that's the one we buy 19 mil in the cash shop. So that one allows you to, that just fully re-rolls, but allows you to pick the previous. Then there's the chaos circulator, which will look at all of your lines, look at the ones that have any kind of variance within their type of line and within their rarity, and then roll a random new number within those parameters. So let's say that you have, because of whatever happened, you have like boss damage, legendary, but on the lowest number within legendary boss, and you have Meso obtain and whatever else you have, but they're all like the lowest or the second lowest. You could just throw a circulator, a chaos circulator on there, because there's a decent chance you either just get back what you had or you make an upgrade somewhere. But that one cannot be. You cannot choose your previous roll. That one's like a gamble. Black circulator is the same as the chaos, but you can pick the previous one.
Okay.
And that's reflected in the price. It's like 3 times the price or something. And those are only like event shops, and like 5 or 10 maybe at most that you have access to.
Okay, makes sense. Also for the Melody coin shop right now, I know I've been buying out the nodes and whatnot, but what else, if I have some left over, should I be looking to get?
Yeah, so definitely the nodes. The highest area that you get to symbols probably have some value, but they're pretty pricey per symbol. Usually I'm looking at definitely getting a heart and a android for it. That's important. And especially if you can get to the Absolab weapon, I would get as many of the Eternal Flames you can get for the weapon to try to roll a high tier, and then maybe also the powerful flames, right? Because flames are usually like pretty rare, but now they're very rare because they changed how drop rate works for flames. It's all just based on the rarity of the boss, and your drop rate doesn't work anymore for them. And doesn't seem like they're going to be fixing that or changing that back anytime soon. So flames would be high value, I would say, especially if you have level 1, if you have Abso stuff that you can flame. Other than that, the cubes for event rings are pretty good because you're in pretty short supply for Meso, always kind of strapped for cash, and you have some of those, right, that you're trying to re-roll for drop in Meso, so you can definitely just quote unquote for free roll that. And other than that, I can't really think of... Oh, yeah, and depending on where you're at, the legendary scroll for event rings could also be pretty good as a result, but that's more of the pricey stuff. I don't know if you have that. But you have, like, the Wake Ring is epic, right? So if you can afford it, you can immediately bump it up to legendary and then start rolling. So that could be another way of basically just buying the upgrade with event participation rather than with your Meso.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a good one because I was doing the math on the 17 star and I was I already got converted that it wasn't really worth it as far as the Meso / time / event coin ratio. It didn't really make sense to me. But yeah, that legendary pot scroll would be useful in my case, and those cubes is something I'd probably get out after I buy out the nodes and stuff.
Yeah, the flames for Abzo would be quite nice, but yeah, eventually you get flames, especially for the weapon. You have a high bar, right? And it goes back to progression grid, like the flames that you're looking for in the different stages that you want to roughly be at to make sure that you're not wasting a whole bunch of potential. Your weapon flame has a quite high bar of what you want to aim for just because of their level. It'll just have such a huge impact compared to all the other flames, right? Because you get a lot of weapon attack from that. You notice that with your current weapon. One thing I did want to say with your hyperstats, this is your bossing setup. You probably just have like one universal setup, I'm guessing, right?
So with this, I just literally click on whatever everything you see there on that picture is mainly everything I've been putting it into besides my strength and arcane. So yeah, it as you could tell, it's not calculated at all this.
Yeah.
But I try to get them all to like the similar level, if that makes sense.
So the further you go, the more you will benefit from having two different setups. And we have presets now, right? So you can click at one of the other boxes and switch, and then that'll just be 3 mil. You don't have to pay like the 10 mil to reset. You can just switch to another preset and have one specifically for mobbing and one specifically for bossing. And most of them will have like the baseline stats general preference with like critical rate and IED. But like, for example, if you're mostly doing bossing on non-arcane power bosses, you don't need any points in arcane power when you're bossing. So those points can be used for something else. But when you're mobbing, it's super important. And so you want arcane power and EXP, for example, when you're mobbing. When you're bossing, you don't want either of those. You want IED and you want boss damage. So if I look at your hyperstats and I see that your IED is at 8, but your boss damage is at 0, I don't know which hyperstat this is, right? This is kind of like some abomination. That's not really. But when you're early on, you're just slamming points, and that makes sense. But the further you go, the more you want the systems to work for you because you've put work into it, right? Like you've earned these points, but right now they're not working for you, not as much as they could be at least.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've definitely been confused with the IED thing, but I did see one of your recent videos that, or I don't know if it was recent, but you kind of explained it better. But I never got around to resetting it or even creating another preset, so that's something I should definitely put on my to-do list. I didn't even know that there were presets, honestly.
Yeah, they didn't. It hasn't been that long yet since they added it. I have to make this video, but like I have this. So basically, you could see the priority here, right? So if you are, so for mobbing, it's like all the red stuff, and for bossing, it's the blue stuff, and then the purple stuff is shared basically. So like arcane power is most important. Again, this is like priority, like the Legion grid, right? Like crit rate is highest priority, but if you have 100, you can move on, right? So like arcane power for some bosses is important, like for Lucid and Will and all of the Tenebris bosses. But if you're not there yet, then you can skip it. Go to the next one. Go to critical rate. You have enough. Go to the next one. Then IED is most important, but only if you're bossing. If you're mobbing, you go to the next one. Then critical damage, and these are like the levels. So I would say like basically go through this list for either mobbing or bossing, and then get all of them to level 5. You have points left, start back from the top, get them to level 8. You have points left, go from the top, get them to level 9. Basically like that.
Okay.
And then...
So arcane is prio, huh?
Yeah, again, because it's final damage. And so that's what you will see. So arcane power, final damage. IED, final damage or less final damage reduction, so also final damage. Critical rate gives you access to critical damage, which is essentially final damage on critical hits, but it is a additive source, not a multiplicative source. That's why it's a little bit lower where it's mentioned.
Right.
And then boss, which is, total damage is also a final damage multiplier, but again is additive and is a bigger source, so you see more reduced efficiency, more diminishing returns, because normal monster damage and regular damage are added together, and boss damage and regular damage are added together, and the further you go through the game, the bigger the total percentage, so the diminishing returns are a little bit heavier. So that's why it's a little bit lower on the priority list. And then you get to utility, then you have the bonus EXP, maybe DFTF PP mana, like for some classes, not for you. And then you have status resistances, like mentioned because it's utility, but this one is, basically not used because of it's a logarithmic scale, and you get like 0.1%, shorter CC with like 100 points at a certain point. Like it doesn't make any sense. I should probably just like fucking delete that one, but I just have it here for completion's sake. And then you have like leftover stats. So your attack power, magic attack, that's like nice for leftover stats, but you typically never want to have it this close to your very vital stats like damage, IED, like that clump. That clump just has to be significantly higher, and then your stat and your attack is just like leftover points. And you maybe don't even put anything in there if you're still actively leveling. Because if you are, you're slowing down how quickly you can get to another level of critical damage or damage, right? Or you have to redo your stats every 2 levels, which is super annoying because you have to click single levels up and everything. So it might be better to just sit on something like this, like sit on 40 points, and just wait until you can buy the next big level.
Okay, makes sense. So for sure, as far as separating the bossing from mobbing, I should probably get this one reset. Kind of
or you can keep this as a reminder. But so if you click reset, it costs you 10 mil, I believe. Maybe the first one is cheaper. I don't remember. Maybe it's like 100k first, and then it works its way up to 10 mil or something. And if you switch to another preset, switching is 3 mil. So whatever is cheaper, just do that.
Okay, for sure, that makes sense. Yeah, definitely handicapped myself with this one. I literally didn't know what IED was for, and I definitely didn't know what to prioritize, as you can tell. I just thought crit damage was OP, so that's literally what I tried to max the most. Or
2 mil switch, Well, it's going to be a combination of all the things. I'm never going to give you like a magic bullet of like do this one thing and now you're like, oh my god, I'm a god. But it's like, moving the matrix around, prioritizing the boost nodes, getting a different skill node in there, moving the Legion pieces around, working on redoing the hyperstats. All of that is maybe like 3% efficiency, but you throw all of those up together and it's possible, or throw all of those in together. It's possible that your damage just goes up by like 50% or something just after a session. But then you have that direction as well, and you get more efficiency out of everything that you're doing, and it'll feel more worth your time with everything that you do. That's hopefully the goal, that you don't miss out on the potential you've already put the work into, you just haven't quite done the last step to unlock it.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. And it kind of opens a direction, and like I see how everything's more cohesive than I thought. I was pretty one-dimensional on everything I did, like, cubing, okay, I'm gonna go for stat, did this for that, but as far as all these other extra factors that could add damage to my, for my character, it definitely makes more sense, to re-roll for the drop in Meso now, now that I know that I'm handicapped on other areas. I handicapped myself for it, so...
Yeah, or slow down, basically a handicap, or, that's the one thing is that you also, but this is more like a mental thing, like a general mental thing, like in real life. It's important to see the difference between not getting something and losing something. But what Maple will try to do, and every video game will try to do with FOMO, is basically try to equate those two, right? So that you see yourself as like missing out or like failing just because you don't get something. And yeah, I don't know. It's to varying degrees that might kind of shape your thinking or how you see some things, I guess.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, I think, yeah, we're a little bit over time, but we're around the end of regular session length. Did you have any... fuck, I think there was one thing. Oh, yeah, do you feel like you understand ID now? Because you mentioned that you saw it on another video, but I don't know if you're 100% on it now.
So okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but IEDs basically, depending on the boss, not really the mobs, right? Depending on the boss, if they have, let's say, 100% defense, and this would basically deduct it from that, right? In a sense.
Yeah, you would multiply them basically. If it's 100, it would be the same as deducting, right? So it would be like 16% of their, or 15.84% of their defense would be left. So that would be given to you as a final damage penalty to all of your, to all of your outputting damage. So if you're attacking a boss with 100% defense, this is pretty decent. If you're attacking a boss with 200% defense, you probably want to do a bit better. If it's a boss with 300% defense, then this is on the lower end, because now, the amount of defense reduction that you're getting is just doubling, tripling. So if you attack a boss with 300% PDR, you're ignoring 84% of that, but that means that the 16% is still left 3 times. So you're left with 48% damage reduction, so only half of your damage goes through.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. It just depends on the boss then, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's calculated into the progression grid, right? Here you have functional IED. So what you are looking at the stat window, that's the visual IED, and then the functional IED is taking into account all of the individual skill buffs, boss debuffs, temporary uptime, whatever things. So like I said, right, like these bosses here around 210, these have about 100% PDR. So that 85, that's fine, right? Just 15% reduction. But if you're getting closer to these bosses, these have 200, 300%. If you're still at this point, you're just losing so much efficiency on everything that you're investing. You need to get more IED, but you'll also get more access to more sources of IED. And again, exclamation mark IED. There's another thing here, explanation, calculation, if you want to do that to see how big your difference is between the functional and the visual. And then you have the sources as well. And just like with crit rate and with crit damage, you just have a list. And then you can just check like, okay, what is something here that is on the list that I just haven't really worked on yet? And then you can use that. Probably, I'm guessing, familiars is not really being tapped right now. That's an easy way in beginning to get a lot. Once you get Golex accessories, that's a huge buff. And what most people do is get at least 1, sometimes 2 lines of ID in their weapon, secondary, and emblem, so you can get a huge chunk early on. It feels bad because it doesn't make your range go up and it doesn't make you kill bosses. But as you've probably noticed, if you would unequip your secondary and try to do bosses, you'd be like pool noodling. None of your damage would go through. Maybe the very, very low level bosses, you won't really notice it there. But if you're trying to do, I don't know, like let's say that you just felt lucky and try to go do Lotus, you might actually get to the point where you just do like less than 1 damage and you just hit ones on everything. You're not even getting your damage through.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, man, I think this whole thing was super helpful. It took a shit ton of notes, so definitely just be reviewing back into it.
Yeah, I'll upload it to YouTube as well, so you could double check, make sure you got everything.
Oh, sick. Perfect. No, that's dope, man. But yeah, man, hey, I appreciate it, bro. Appreciate the direction. Definitely feel like there's a lot I kind of need to sift through, but yeah, this is definitely a game changer, bro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. If there's any specific details again that you need to look over, you can always use the command. And if there's, it'll answer most of your questions, but probably never all of them. But if you still have follow-up questions, you can ask anyone in the chat. They probably heard me give an answer similar to what you're probably looking for like 10 or 15 times. So some of the people in the chat are at this point beyond my level of skill, because they've got their own stuff and they've heard all of my stuff already. So, you know, 1 + 1, always 2 people over is no more than 1, right? So a lot of helpful people in chat, or, you know, if I see your message, I can always help you out. So yeah, just wish you good luck on everything. And
all right,
yeah, I'll see you I'll see you around, I guess. But yeah, I hope it was successful for you, and that you can enjoy and get some more efficiency out of your time spent.
For sure, man. Appreciate you, man. Talk soon, and take care, man.
Yeah, you too. Have a good one. Cool. All right, so if you guys were helped by this session, I'm glad. If you guys were doing a totem, I think you have about 16 minutes left on your totem. Good luck on that. Last little bit, get some money. And yeah, maybe there's a few things here that you picked up that you just didn't know yet, and then maybe you already knew everything and you're just giga chatting it up. And that's fine too, you know. Maybe there's another session. Check the playlist. Maybe there's another session that can help you out. No. But yeah, if you want one of these sessions as well, check out the description of the video, or use !coaching in the Twitch chat. You can get these sessions either by direct donation, or you can get you can buy them with channel points in the store for Stream Elements if you watch my stream, if you're a subscriber, or you can leave a comment. So if you would like to win a free session, make sure you leave a comment with your Discord name and saying that you would like to win one of these. And at the end of the month, I do random number rolling, and I pick 2 lucky winners who get a free session with me. So if you're interested in that, make sure you follow that. As far as everything else goes, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. YouTube people, again, Twitch people, I am not ending the stream yet. Okay, this is a goodbye for the YouTube people. Always a few people think I'm ending the stream. And yeah, check out for any of the resources. You can find all of these that we went through. We went through a lot of them this session. All of these are available in the Twitch chat. Just ! And then whatever topic you're looking for, or ! Help, ! Info, or ! Commands gets you the list of all of the commands that I have, and then you can find what I have information for or not. People who watch the stream can even request extra commands, and we try to keep all of them up to date as much as possible. So if that is something that could interest you, could help you, I gladly see you on the Twitch chat. And during my stream, I stream every day over at twitch.tv/Scardor. And if not, I'll just see you on the next YouTube video. So thank you for watching, and bye.